Hello, this is the Provoked Prawn, and this is the Corsair K65 RGB Mini, a 60% gaming keyboard from Corsair, and the company's first 60% gaming keyboard. Don't get confused by the 65 in the name, it's actually 60%, not 65%, and a tiny little gaming keyboard with a number of interesting highlights, features and design aesthetics to it, which include, as you can see, some fairly awesome RGB lighting. More on that a bit later on, because it is layerable and customizable both at hardware level and within IQ software. I'm going to talk to you about that as I go through and show off a bit more on it. And this is an unboxing and review video where I'm going to show you what you get in the box, but also talk about my initial impressions of it and what it's been like to use, the lowlights and highlights of it, and the features. I'm going to include all the specifications in the description, as well as a link to the official Corsair video on how to use the various function buttons on this keyboard, because being a 60% keyboard, it means that you lose some of the standard keys, but they are crammed within the other keys in a secondary layer, and there are a number of interesting functions in that in itself, such as recording macros on the fly, access to media control keys, lighting adjustment. There's even a section, which I'll show you a bit later on, for adjusting your mouse cursor and doing mouse clicks with the function button, which is pretty nuts. I find that one a bit odd, I'll be honest. I'll talk about that a bit more later on. But this is $109 or £109 sterling, and it comes with a variety of switch options that include Cherry MX Speed, Cherry Silent and Cherry MX Red switches, which is what's included here. That does vary per region. Now I'm going to link you to Random Frank P's video, which I'd recommend checking out, but please stick with me to the end of my video first, where he talked about the key switch setup and questioned why Corsair has gone for Cherry switches rather than their own optical mechanical switches. And it is an interesting choice, and I'm going to cover this a bit more in the near future, because I'm going to do a video to compare this with the Razer Huntsman Mini, which did use optical switches, whereas this one doesn't. And it's a bit of an odd choice, especially when you consider that Corsair has made a point of making a feature of this K65 RGB Mini to be that it has an 8000 Hz polling rate, which means that it is able to offer 8 times faster transmission of your key presses to your PC than a standard gaming keyboard. They're basically making a similar point to the Razer Viper 8K, which has that 8 kHz polling rate, basically delivering faster inputs to your PC and a lower latency. So they're making the most of that, but then they're using Cherry switches, which are kind of dated, but then it is able to register those presses really fast. And I haven't seen a negative impact on it, but it's an interesting point. A new keyboard, and obviously they have those optical key switches, so why they didn't choose to put them in here is a bit of an oddity that might put some off, but I don't think it's a problem, at least not from what I'm seeing so far. And what you're going to notice as well is a very striking design that includes a funky little spacebar, which is textured as well. So that spacebar at the bottom is obviously unusual in the highlight and design of it, and it's designed to let a lot more light through, but there's also another spacebar and for the escape key included, so you can switch those out. Now, the standard keycaps are PBT Double-Shot keycaps. You'll notice they have that sort of rough texture to them. They're 1.5 millimeters thick. They're designed to stand up to wear and tear over time and to give you a comfortable grip on the keyboard and just very nice fit in your hand. But if you don't like that textured one, you can get a standard spacebar that's included in the box. But it is odd. Again, another oddity is that the extra escape key and the spacebar seem to be ABS rather than PBT Double-Shot. Now, in the box, you also get the manual, which talks you through a number of different adjustments that you can do. As I said, I'll leave a link to the Corsair video on this, which is worth checking out. I'm also going to do a separate video on just the key presses, so if you want to hear what the key sounds are like, please be sure to check that out. I'm also going to do another video to compare this with the HyperX Origins 60, which is another 60% keyboard with a slightly different key setup. And one of the things that I noted with the Corsair when I got them out and compared the two, actually, because I had some video footage I'll show you a bit later on, where basically did key presses recording between the two, and I noticed that there's quite a lot of noise from the Corsair. From these Cherry MX Red switches, there's a bit of a ting, and they're quite noisy compared to the HyperX. So obviously there are variants. As I said, you can get silent and speed switches. I did find that there's certainly a bit of a metallic feedback sound from these keys with the red ones. So that's something to bear in mind. Now, as I was saying, the function keys allow you to bury various things in there, and I'm going to show you the lighting effects on that later on, but there are a number of different things that you can do with it, which is pretty nifty on the fly. So you can change lighting effects, and there are hardware lighting effects built into it, and you basically press the function key and then C to change between those. I'm going to show you that a bit later on. You'll also see that the labeling is etched on the front of them, so you can easily see. And you'll note on the left hand side around WASD, you'll see that it has the setup for the adjustment of your cursor. So basically you can have mouse functions including right and left click, scroll and cursor left and right and things from there, which is a very strange thing. I can't really think of any uses for it personally, but you'd have to hold the function key and then press those keys in order to basically replicate mouse presses, which is quite odd. Another thing that you can see is a little person on Z. That is to change profile, because you can set up to a multiple of 50 different profiles with the onboard memory, which is a 8 megabytes onboard memory for up to 50 different profiles that you can set within there. You'll also see you can change the brightness with the X key, a function key and X, and then if other things as well. You can disable the Windows key by doing function key and Windows key. That basically sets it into a gaming mode so you don't accidentally activate the Windows key. You'll see the textured design that I was talking about on that spacebar, and you'll see just how much light that let through, and it's kind of a really funky pattern on it. Very nice design there. And another thing, if you look close up here, is that it has a white backing to it. So the board itself has a white overlay over the top of the backplate, which then reflects the light, the RGB lighting, through between the keys and helps it to shine. So even though they're not like putting keycaps or anything, and they are PBT Double-Shot, which tend to not let too much light through, you do actually get a nice bit of lighting reflection through that, and you'll have seen that at the beginning, and I'll show you that a bit more as we go through the video as well. A few other things of note is that what you will see is that this keyboard is quite chunky. It is a bit of a chunky beast. It has a detachable USB-C cable, which Random Frank P pointed out that the cable isn't central in the board itself. So if you're really particular about things like that, I didn't notice it. It doesn't bother me that it's not right in the middle. It's not perfectly symmetrical. It's slightly off to the left, and that might bother you. But it is detachable USB-C, which means that you can use your own cable. So you can use a custom cable or USB-C to USB-C, whatever you happen to have. I've got a red one here that I can use as an example. Basically means you can customize the look and feel of it with ease, which is a nice option and certainly something that people will enjoy. But I did notice that just how large and chunky it is, and I've gone from a lower profile keyboard to this, so it sits quite high off the desk. But obviously being a 60% keyboard means it takes up a very small amount of space on your desk, which gives you a lot more room for your mouse, which is obviously a welcome thing. In the box you also get a keycap puller, obviously for taking off that spacebar. If you don't like this custom one, you can obviously go for the understated one that's also included. Although, as I said, you'll notice that the main one is PBT Double-Shot. The other one doesn't seem to be, which is a bit strange. But you can see just how much RGB lighting lets through here with that fancy one installed, and I quite like it personally. I think it adds a nice accent to the keyboard. It's also really nicely textured, so all those little white triangles that you can see, they're all textured, and you can feel that on your fingers when you're touching it, which is also satisfying. And you can see some of that backplate that I was talking about here with that white effect with a finish on it. Very shiny, lets out a lot of light, and you have a lot of light coming through there. One thing that I will show in the HyperX video, though, by comparison, is it doesn't have a lot of light bleed around the edges, so it doesn't like let RGB lighting onto your desk. But I think it looks really nice. It has a premium finish to it. It looks very good in that way. It isn't like super solid in terms of having metal finish on it, but yet it's weighty in the hand, the keyboard, and it certainly feels a very good quality. Now here you can see it alongside the G915 TKL, which is my main keyboard. When I'm not reviewing other keyboards, I'm using this one because I like the low profile design of it and the fit of it on my desk. You see the difference between the two. The G915 is really thin and low profile. The K65 Mini is a bit of a chunky monkey by comparison, certainly at the rear. It raises up at the rear in order to sit in a certain position akin to basically having the feet up on the keyboard to get it in a more comfortable position. And I haven't found it uncomfortable to use, but going from something so low profile to something that sits like this has been quite a challenge, and it's quite different. So I think it's worth bearing in mind. I've seen other 60% keyboards that don't sit quite so high, so the back of it is quite high up, so it's got a bit of an angle on it. But again, I still think it looks nice, got a nice curvature to it. It is comfortable to use, but worth bearing in mind. Now from this angle you can see the printing of the labelling on the keycaps a bit more, especially with the spacebar taken off. And you'll note the various different settings for the RGB lighting there. Also note some of the things. You can see you have print screen, pause, media playback keys along here as well. So all those things are accessed with the function key and then pressing that button. If you know your 60% keyboards, you'll be used to this anyway. For me, actually, and this isn't a criticism of the K65, but of 60% in general, I find them very frustrating to get used to. I like TKL setups. If you've never used a 60% keyboard before and you suddenly move to one, you'll probably find the same thing. There are key presses that I'm used to using that I suddenly miss when I go to a 60%. Something simple like the directional arrow keys is now buried in H, J, K, and U. So I tend to use shortcuts in Windows, like pressing the Windows key and then a directional arrow key to move windows around and snap them to the edge of Windows, for example. So I can go side by side with various things. In order to do that, I need to press on this keyboard Windows key, function key, and then the directional key. So a problem with the 60% is you find a lot of the time you have to press an extra button. You're making an extra button press for basically simple actions like that, including media playback, print screen, simple little things that you only usually press one key for. Suddenly you're pressing two, but that's a gripe with a 60% keyboard rather than with this keyboard specifically. I think it's worth mentioning if you've never had a 60% before. Now, a bit more of a close-up of the RGB lighting, and in a second I'm going to show you how you control that with the hardware setups. And there are various different key presses and setups installed as default, so even without IQ installed you can access these things. So with a function key and C, you can see that here, you can change between various different lighting setups. It has default spiral rainbow, rain, rainbow wave, visor, type lighting ripple, color shift, color pulse, and static, which then goes between 8 colors. So you can see even as standard it has multiple different RGB lighting effects pre-programmed into it that you can access with ease, and they all look fantastic and they're really easy to do. Also, you'll see with V you could change the effect direction. So if you have an effect that's basically making its way across the keyboard, you can change the direction of it. With function key and B, you can change the speed of it as well, so you can speed it up and slow it down. So there's loads of options for just customizing that lighting with ease. Another thing you can do is you can use function key and X to change the brightness between various different levels, so you can basically turn it off if you don't want it, or you can set it with ease. And it's really nice to not have to worry about using IQ. And obviously the hardware setting means that when IQ's not on and running, then that's the lighting that you're going to get. So that's when you're locking your computer and things like that as well. If you're leaving it running but you lock your PC, then it goes into hardware mode. And obviously within IQ software, which I'll show you a bit later on, you can customize it a lot more. One of the things that they make a selling point of is that you can layer the effects. So you can have up to 20 layers within that hardware mode, and you can have even more if you're using it via IQ, and you can set up layers, so basically laying lighting on top of one another, and the results of that are very nice. Certainly not as nice as other keyboards I've seen, like the HyperX Alloy Elite 2, which probably had the nicest RGB lighting thanks to the pudding keycaps, but the lighting on this is very customizable and it does look really nice, and it has a very premium effect to it as well, which I think is really neat. And that's certainly one of the main highlights and selling points of this, is you get an overall nice design which you can customize. So far you can see there's a multitude of different things and highlights to it. Obviously you have the choice of keycaps, you have PBT Double-Shot, you have multiple different actions that you can get to with ease from in there. You have the 8000 Hertz polling rate. Another thing that they're doing is they're selling custom keycaps. You can't get them at the moment, and unfortunately I haven't got any to be able to show you what they're like, but if you check out the links in the description, I'll add a link to them, and you can see in the near future you're going to be able to buy a load of customized keycaps with different colors and designs on them, so you can personalize it a bit more with white, red, and all sorts of other colors. They've got some really nice ones coming. And that is another point about this. K65 RGB Mini has a standard bottom row, much like Corsair's other recent gaming keyboards, including the K100 that I did a video on recently. That means that you can use your own custom keycaps on here, so you could potentially use pudding keycaps or other keycaps from other places, personalize it a bit more, customize it the way you want it, and that's a really nice addition to the Corsair's lineup lately. They're making it a lot easier to do that sort of thing. But even as standard, as you can see from these shots here, this RGB lighting looks great. That white backplate really makes it shine. The various different effects are really nice too, and the overall look and feel of it's nice. Here you can see a bit more of a PBT texturing on it, and sort of rough finish that gives. It certainly doesn't feel rough on the hands, but you can see it's built to last. And one of the niggles I've had with Razer keyboards is, I said previously with PBT Double-Shot, that the RGB lighting doesn't shine through the etching very well. I don't think that's a problem so much on the K65 Mini. It looks the part, and most of the keys are easily visible with the RGB lighting turned on as well, so the end result is very nice. A quick point of note is this is the UK layout, and so if you're wondering why the shift key and things look different, that's why. Obviously this is available in different layouts and region setups, as well as with the different key switches, so bear that in mind when you check out the links in the description too. So on to what it's like to use. I've actually found that it has been quite a pleasure to use for gaming and working on. Generally takes me a while to adjust to a 60% keyboard with those extra functions being buried, but for typing and for gaming it's been very nice. Really responsive. Obviously the Cherry MX switches have various different actuations, and I'll leave all that data in the description so you can check it out in terms of the options on that. But the polling rate and things like that mean that you get a fast and accurate response, and I certainly haven't had any issues with that, and I've been using it playing some pretty fast-paced gaming fun with Rainbow Six Siege lately, and I've been enjoying using it and getting some good results from it. So all in all, I don't have any complaints with that at all, and it's been joyful. Now I want to dive into the Corsair IQ software. You'll note this is a new version of IQ, which I'm actually having some problems with because these default scenes don't seem to do anything. They're not working, but I think Memesize Mystic Light is being a bit of a pain with it. But what I want to do is go through the various settings within here. You'll note that they're lighting effects, and you can see there are hardware lighting effects, and then there are standard lighting effects too, and you can see that it's just not working for me at the moment with the lighting effects, and I think that's because Mystic Light is interfering with it, and I'm trying to sort out. But if you are having problems, it's worth checking other RGB lighting on your PC to make sure that's not causing a problem. So what I want to cover is hardware lighting. So essentially with hardware lighting, what you can do is you can set it up in various layers. So hardware lighting is what's going to happen when IQ is not running, and that's what I was showing you with the key presses on here, but you can also do it within the software. So what I've done is I'm setting all the keys to have a static white color all the way across, and you can see it in the top left. And then I've chosen to select WASD, so that shows up as blue, and you can see that it's really easy to be able to do this. You've got quick lighting zones that you can set, or you can set it on a key by key basis. Now I'm going to apply another effect, which is a ripple effect, where basically I'm setting it to ripple across the keyboard on a key press. So you can see you can set it on key pressed and from the specific press key, and you can set it by the number of times that you want it to happen, whether that's a multitude of times or just a couple of times. So basically when you press a key, it then sends out a ripple. And this is how you can basically layer up multiples. And I said in hardware mode, you can set 20 different layers. So you can really customize the RGB lighting in whatever way you want. And there's multiple different effects to choose from with the custom ones. You could just have static effects for different colors on different keys so that they stand out when you're gaming. And as I said, obviously you can have multiple different profiles as well that you can access both from the keyboard and within IQ, so you could set up different lighting for different things. And if you're aware of IQ, then you've probably seen this sort of thing before, but I think it was worth showing. And they've changed the design of IQ as well. ready for this new keyboard or to go alongside with it, so you can see quite a significant change from that too. And the number of effects applicable are fantastic, and you can layer as many as you want within the software variant of it, which unfortunately I can't show because of the problems I'm having with that. But you can see I'm setting up tight lighting effects and all sorts. You have a variety of different options to choose from in here, so you can set effects so that when you press certain keys, it then sends out lighting effects from that. As I said, again, this isn't the best RGB lighting I've seen. You can see from my picture-on-picture effect that it isn't amazing. I think that the default colors are probably a bit nicer. I've certainly seen some better RGB lighting from other companies. The SteelSeries Apex Pro has some very nice RGB lighting. The HyperX Alloy Elite 2 had some really nice RGB lighting as well. This one isn't bad, and the default effects are very nice, but I think they could be better. Perhaps with other key sets might be worth looking at. Now, the hardware key assignments, you can change your key assignments both at software and hardware level in the same way as the lighting, and that's then stored and used when not in IQ. And as I said, it's got onboard memory, so it will store what you're doing there, and you can do a variety of things within the software, so you can access a number of different assignments, whether it's changing key presses, mouse clicks, keyboard presses, text, media playback, launching applications, and recording macros. So I'm just going to show you how you can record a macro. Within those settings, you can get it so it doesn't record delays, so you can adjust things in there. And what I'm going to show you is that you can basically set whatever you want, record it, and assign it to a key. So I've assigned it to caps lock in this case, and then I'm just typing out some text just to demonstrate what you can do. And once you press stop, you can then basically get into Notepad to test it out and see that it's working okay, and check that. And you can see that I've failed to spell the Provoked Prawn properly. I can't spell my own name, but you can actually drag and drop the letters in here and adjust the macro that you've recorded as well. You can delete things out of it and customize it. It's really easy to set up macros and customize the keystrokes and whatever else as well, really easily and simply, which is fantastic. And if you don't want these things, then it's easy to adjust. Another thing that you can do is you can disable the key if you don't want it. So I don't like caps lock, so I can disable that with these. You can also change to other things. For example, you can set up a keystroke, and this can be a number of things. So for example, change cap lock to be Shift and D, or whatever other variations of keys you want. And if you don't want that, you can obviously delete it as well. Now, within the other settings, you'll know that you can also go into the settings themselves, and this is an important point. In the performance and settings of the keyboard, you can change the polling rate. As default, I think it was at 1000 Hertz. Make sure your keyboard's up to date with the latest firmware, and then you can get up to 8000 Hertz polling rate, which obviously then reduces the latency potentially to 0.125 milliseconds, and that will then improve the performance of the keyboard as well. And that firmware is also necessary to ensure that you can layer all the lighting as well as possible. So there you go, an in-depth look at the K65 Mini. Hope you found this video useful. Let me know in the comments if you've got any questions. Be sure to check out the links in the description, where I'll have a separate video with the key presses, and I'm also going to do a comparison with both the Razer Huntsman Mini and the HyperX Origin 60 soon, so check back for those. Thanks for watching. This has been the Provoked Prawn. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you found it useful, interesting, hilarious, or all of the above. Be sure to check out the description for other information you might find interesting, and subscribe and watch these other videos as well that I think might be useful to you, and have a great life.